So I got an email this week from one of our subscribers, and he dared me to do a video on the 5 most expensive classic Mercedes that you can purchase. And I wanted to take account 2 things. The first one is the cost of the car, and the second one is how big of a money pit the car is going to be. And then the third one is going to be actually how inefficient the car is. So, you know, there are a number of cars that fall into this category, but looking at the cost of the cars strictly, you come up with a lot of models that have recently shot to the top. And so starting in at number 5, the 190e 2.3 16 valve. The 190e 16 valve used to be a car you could buy for $5,000, maybe $10,000 for a really good one. But now if you want a really good one, you're going to be paying $20,000 to $30,000. And if you want a decent car, a car that doesn't have any major issues, and obviously no major cosmetic blemishes or anything like that, it's probably going to be upwards of $15,000 for a higher mileage example. So that doesn't mean a no-needs car, it just means a car with no major needs. A lot of the problems with 16 valves also tend to come after the fact because there's some expensive services that nobody does on the cars. Nobody replaces suspension parts. Almost everybody messes with the springs. The interiors almost always need major repairs, such as rear door panels and rear window regulators. They almost always need dashboards. They almost always need, well, you get the picture. Usually fuel injection stuff isn't too far away either. So the 16 valve is not a bad car per se, but it's definitely going to cost you $20,000 for the right car, and then maybe an additional $5,000 to $10,000 in parts and labor fixing stuff that you didn't expect to repair. The number 2 car that, number 4, because we're counting down. The number 4 car that comes next is probably the 300 Adenauer. These offer great value for the money, but they're still not cheap, and parts are a fortune, believe me. The Adenauer is usually a $50,000 car for a non-AC, decent running, driving, rust-free example that presents well cosmetically and functions well mechanically. That doesn't mean it's not going to have any needs, but it shouldn't have any really glaring major problems. Of course, that's not always true, because sometimes you need things like valve guides that nobody expected you to need, or you have transmission issues, or you need a rear axle boot. Almost nobody replaces that rear axle boot, so you're probably going to have to. So the 300 Adenauer is an obvious next, and the cost of a good one is about 50 grand. And it seems like most people who buy these things have to put anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 in them to make them 100%. And then when you start getting into cosmetics, there's even more money to spend. The 300 A, B, and C are a little bit cheaper because they don't have the fuel injection system, and the A and B have a simpler rear axle, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be off the hook. Probably number 3 on this list is going to be the 500e. The 500e was a really prestigious example of the 124 and of a modern Mercedes. It doesn't have the glam that some of the other cars in this list do, with the exception of the 16 valve. But it's sort of a brutal sleeper. When you see one, you have to take a second, and then you realize what it is. So a good 500e now is starting to be $25,000, $35,000. And if you want a low mileage 500e, there are reports of these things selling for $75,000 or more. If you want an E60, well, let's just hope you have $100,000 or more sitting around for a genuine AMG E60. These vehicles don't come easy and they don't come cheap, and once you get them, you still have items like evaporators and wiring harnesses to replace. So if you're buying a 500e, try to focus on the receipts as well as the cosmetic condition of the car. And in fact, it's not a bad idea to plug in an SDS system and read codes. Or you can just sort of buy the car and accept whatever is wrong with it, which I've gotten in the habit of doing. The number 4 car that comes in after this list is the 450 SEL 6.9. Did I say 450 SEL 6.9? 2, if you're...
finished the 500e?
Yes, I did. It's all finished. Number 2, you may have been able to guess this, but I would say it's the 450 SEL 6.9. And it's not particularly because the 6.9 isn't a robust car. It's simply because the entire car is really notoriously fragile, from the climate control system to some of the interior trim and the dashboard. And, you know, while you have this immense body structure, rust can be a problem. So we found that with a lot of 6.9s, there's just endless spending of money that has to occur to do things like make the climate control systems, the suspension systems, the dry sump lubrication systems, the fuel injection systems work. And if you're lucky, you won't need to do anything more than put accumulators in the suspension, but if you're not lucky, you may have some expensive suspension valves. Tied at number 2 is probably the 300 SEL 6.3. If you bring a 6.3 that has been mechanically neglected to any Mercedes garage that knows anything, you're probably going to end up with the same 10 items that are expensive to deal with. Airbags, air suspension leveling valves, water pump, thermostat housing, which is only $550, subframe mounts, rear axle bushings, AC compressor reseal with a new expansion valve, and then, let's see here. Usually they need a radiator, which is kind of expensive, but it could be worse. And then, you know, some of these things need to have the transmissions resealed, the drive shafts balanced, and the worst one, a headliner. So if you have any 108 or 109 that needs a headliner, I feel for you. And of course, coming in at number 1 is the 600. Now, it's not fair for me to say, oh, the 600 is number 1 and you should just assume it. I'm going to explain why the 600 is number 1. As I've said in my previous videos, everything in the 600 is designed to be repaired. Every window switch, every brake caliper, every hydraulic mechanism, even every electrical switch, the climate control unit, all of it was built to sort of the old world German standard where it was all serviceable. The thing is that servicing this stuff takes hours and hours and hours and hours. So I found that when it came to parts, the 600 was not a significant money pit compared to something like a 6.3. The problem started with the labor. It was just crazy amounts of labor, 3 or 4 times the amount of labor on a 600, you know, for compared to anything else. So, you know, if you are considering buying a 600, which I wouldn't say don't if you've always wanted one, just remember that doing it yourself is going to save you most of the money. So anyway, if you think that there's a Mercedes that's more expensive than some of the ones on this list, leave a comment below and let us know. And in the meantime, like, share, and subscribe. And if you want more advice about buying your own classic Mercedes, let us know. And if you haven't supported us on Patreon yet, remember, if you support us on Patreon, we will be right there when you need us to support you when you're having a problem with your Mercedes, with realistic advice and turn-by-turn directions. So thank you for subscribing if you've done so, and in the meantime, enjoy driving your Mercedes-Benz.